Welcome to a new episode of Código Mujer, Central PA First Latina podcast. Today we have a very special guest. Her name is Selma Toporan, founder of Aspire USA Coaching. Welcome, Selma, to our Código Mujer podcast. That means women's codes.
Well, thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you for accepting our invitation. I want to start with your story in the very beginning. I want to know, can you tell us a little bit about your journey and how you arrived to the U.S.?
Yes, of course. I came to the United States at the age of 14 from Bosnia, and that was in the 90s during the war that was happening there. So after living in a refugee camp for a while, my parents decided that it wasn't really safe for us to go back home. So we decided to resettle in the United States, and that was with little to no preparation for what is to come. And that journey really stayed with me and was the reason behind Aspire USA Coaching, because I didn't want other people to go through all that by themselves and not have any support.
You came to the U.S. at a very young age. What was the biggest challenge you encountered?
So the biggest challenge was clearly the language and the culture that is being experienced here, which is different from where I came from. So learning those social cues, how to make friends, how to even do school and work was different. So I had to really learn how things work here, which were totally different from how things worked back home. So that was the biggest struggle for me personally.
What was that very specific moment that tell you, I need to create Aspire USA Coaching?
Well, that really happened in kind of stages. First, when I came to United States, I wish there was something for me to turn to, a resource, a mentor, a book, something that could help me navigate the process. But it wasn't until years of teaching when I had the tools for actually handling transitions, and then my nonprofit work and seeing how other people have dealt with that and some struggles that they still face even 20, 30 years after they have already resettled, that inspired me to really use my background, my knowledge to create a resource that they can use to help, and also offer courses and as well as coaching one-on-one.
Many of us, immigrants and refugees, struggle with confidence, language, many cultural barriers. But for you, what is the biggest emotional challenge that newcomers face?
I think if you're coming as an adult, the biggest challenge is that loss of identity. Maybe you were a doctor back home or a teacher or engineer, and all of a sudden you come here, and now who are you? Are you still the same? So many people are starting with entry-level positions, maybe not even in their field. They're learning the language. They can't really communicate, show what they know yet. So that loss of identity, I feel, is the biggest challenge facing adult immigrants that come to the United States. So even something as simple, how do you introduce yourself where your value is still preserved, your confidence is still preserved? So you can say, I work at the factory today, but back home I was a teacher, and I'm working my way to get my credentials here. So that right away speaks that level of confidence that you're not starting over, you're building something new from already a foundation that you have. So you're not starting from a blank slate. You're someone with a lot of experience. You're just working towards translating that to you.
What advice would you give someone who is facing those challenges and somebody that feels overwhelmed and when arriving to a new country?
I would like to tell them that there's nothing wrong with them. The whole transition is a very predictable experience. So that doesn't mean that the issue lies with them. It's just learning the patterns that they have to go through, whether it's dealing with culture shock, whether that is learning how things work here. And it's a completely normal experience to feel that. It's not a personal failure. And they're navigating systems that were really never explicitly taught to them. Right. So once those rules become visible, once they realize what they need to learn, I think the process becomes much more easier to handle and the confidence grows.
How immigrants and refugees can maintain their cultural identity but also adapting to life in the U.S.?
Yes, that's something I really feel passionately about because the goal is never to erase who you are. So my tagline at Aspire USA Coaching is helping immigrants communicate with confidence and thrive in American life without losing who they are. Integration is not the same thing as assimilation. You can learn to navigate workplace culture, understand communication styles, build confidence, and still hold on to your own values, your own culture, your own language transitions. In fact, I believe bicultural identity is really a superpower in terms of how you see problems, how do you creatively think, and how you can understand and empathize with people that might not follow the same cultural rules that you're following.
Okay, let's talk more about Aspire USA Coaching. What is the mission behind your work?
So the mission behind Aspire USA Coaching is to allow newcomers to feel seen and valued and build that confidence so they can feel a sense of belonging here. So it fills a specific gap between what initial language courses do to actually translating that experience into learning the cultural expectations and norms here so they can thrive and have more confidence to integrate and feel a sense of belonging and build their new life here.
When someone goes to your office and seek assistance from you, what are the most common goals that people seek from your coaching?
So when people come to me, they usually want to integrate better and improve their language skills, but really underneath all of that, I feel is the confidence that's missing and the sense of belonging that they really want to build here. So it could start off with, I want to be more comfortable here, but it's really, I need to feel that I belong here. So I offer one-on-one coaching. I have the book Adjusting to Life in the USA that really walks people through multiple stages of transition, and classes, whether that's building your resilience, learning English, or understanding American culture. All of those things combined help people really transition successfully and in shorter amount of time than they would have to do on their own.
You talked a lot about confidence, being confident, but how can someone build confidence when you feel like you're stuck?
That's a really good question. And I think first you have to be sure to, whatever that you're struggling in, you have to name it. You have to make it visible. So some people might say, okay, I'm not really confident, but what specifically about that you're not comfortable with? Maybe it's initiating conversations with other people. So once you say, okay, I'm not comfortable initiating that communication with people that I'm not familiar with, so now we know. We can start with, okay, let's talk about small talk, how that is built here. What are some topics that we can talk about? What are some safe topics? Of course, you want to talk about more neutral topics and not about politics or religion right away.
Especially nowadays, you don't want to talk about
because
politics.
that can turn some people off, right? So then once we have identified that step is, okay, let me try to communicate with a person at work, from even as simple as saying hi to everyone. That really opens the door to building those friendships. So in the United States, friendships really are built through like starting with small talk first and building that over a long period of time. It doesn't just happen instantaneously. So understanding that people need to use those skills of small talk to build relationships is really important, because some people really don't really value how small talks function as a gateway to building relationships in the United States.
Selma, you mentioned the small talk. I think that was a struggle for me, because I come from a culture that we're so open and we talk about anything and everything with just somebody that we just met 5 minutes ago. You know, we just ask him about, hey, where are you coming from? Where are you doing? What is your work? You know, and it took me a while to kind of step back and do that small talk and then, you know, be more open. I struggle with that personally. So I used to be so open and I used to tell everybody my story, and then I learned, no, you can't do that here.
Right, they can come off as really strong right away from people, and they, in United States, they typically appreciate having multiple exposure to you before you really open up. So I've heard it somewhere saying that, it's like a comparing different fruits to each other, right? Like you might be from a culture that's more like a melon, right?
Right.
It's hard on the outside, but once you open up, you really just share everything. Versus
Right.
in the United States, it might be more like a peach, okay? So it's very nice and soft. At first, you talk about, hi, how are you? Really without expecting the answer besides good, right? But it takes a long time to get to the middle and actually really be personable and share deepest struggle with someone. It takes longer time. In fact, there's friendship studies where they say it takes about 90 hours really to go from just somebody that you know to acquaintance.
Right.
And even to become a best friend, it takes over 200 hours. So you have to put in that time. You really cannot skip it here if you want to build
gotta work it.
friendships.
It doesn't come overnight. Selma, do you have any success stories that you want to share with us that really from a client that deeply impacted you?
Yes, I can share some examples without giving, obviously, the privacy of my clients away, because that's important to me. For example, one client came to me, she was really struggling with her accent and her confidence of, working with other people at work in a professional role that she newly was actually promoted to. So after working with me for about 6 sessions, really, that's all it took, she was able to understand the workplace dynamic, how to really collaborate with people, and how to assign different tasks that she was able to do with her employees. And then she was able to also build connection with them on a personal level rather than what she was doing previously was just going right to work. And that important connection building, it was really key for her to feel like she belongs and that she feels like people understand that she really cares about them, which she did, but she really didn't communicate previously. So that can kind of turn some people off if you don't understand that. Another story was a client came to me, she was dealing with a domestic violence situation, and her English was very limited, so to get support services was something that she really needed help with. So I was able to connect her with an interpreter, and we were able to connect her with services, and she's doing quite well today, which I'm really happy about.
Yes, that's wonderful to hear, especially when you come to a new place and you're struggling with something that you were not expecting. And then finding resources that you don't know where to go. So I'm glad that you were able to help her. If you can share with us like 3 small habits that people can do here to grow professionally and personally in life in the US.
I would say first start with identifying what you're struggling with, whether that is having more confidence, whether that's speaking in front of people, whether that is taking more initiative at work. That is something that could be a really hard thing for people, especially because some people come from a more humble culture where talking about your own self and your skills is looked down upon. So advocating for yourself would be something that I would also recommend people do. And that is just speaking about what you do well and being enthusiastic about different roles here that are available to you, because that really comes across as willing to work with other people, willing to connect with them, and seeing the things in a positive way. So the more positive you can see, the more opportunities that you come across. It just works that way where you now, if you're looking for positives, you'll find positives. If you're looking for negatives, of course, we'll all find negatives, right? So you really want to work against your brain, because the brain tends to want to protect us, right? So you want to identify like the opportunities in your environment, and you're more willing to take chances, put yourself out there, and then observe what other people do. That's really important too, because we learn so much from observing, whether that's in personal life, seeing how our colleagues are doing it, especially the successful one, and asking questions. Don't be afraid to say, hey, how did you do this? Or I loved your presentation. Can you show me the process that you went through to put that together? And people are more than willing to really help you and mentor you, but you have to take that initiative to ask. They're not going to just come to you and say, hey, I would like to mentor you. You really have to kind of be proactive, put yourself out there after observing who you might want to connect with, and advocating for yourself in that regard.
That's wonderful to hear, Selma, because a lot of us come to this country, immigrants and refugees, we come with luggage, right? We also comes, with knowledge and professionalism. And that is something that a lot of us struggle communicating professionally at work. What would be a good tip for us to improve our communication skills? And what do you think are the skills that are needed in the workforce as an immigrant?
I think we all struggle with that at some point. Yeah. And learning about the context is very important. Besides the language, really, it's understanding how here people communicate with politeness first, honesty second. And that is very different from any culture where they tend to be more blunt and direct, and they'll tell you if they don't like something right away. And that can, be seen as really intimidating for some people here. They might not want to approach you, or if they're looking for a leader, they might not want to look at someone like that because to them that communicates negativity. So you really want to kind of take a step back and see that, okay, yes, I understand there might be some problems here, but let me first communicate something positive and then say, we might try this strategy, or I like what you said, can we also look at this alternative? So it's the delivery that is really important in the United States. Even like when your supervisor might correct you on something, but they really frame it as a compliment, and sometimes you could be like, okay, was that really a correction or was that a compliment? So you have to really be able to, they call it the sandwich method, where they start with a compliment, give you a slight little correction, and then end with a compliment. And oftentimes that goes over people's head. They think, oh, I just did good. And and they don't know really, like when it comes to their evaluation, they are surprised because that little criticism that was in the middle there, they missed it totally. So understanding how people deliver feedback is really important.
And not take it personal.
Because feedback is meant to be something for growth. We are not perfect, we're human beings, and the whole goal is to keep working on ourselves and grow personally and professionally.
Selma, we saw you in ABC 27 News. What was that experience like?
Yeah, so I was featured on Good Day PA on ABC 27, and that was really a very proud moment for me, because it brought the conversation that we're having to a much wider audience, that communication gap, the adjustment experience, what we're dealing with, and how support is needed to a much wider and much needed audience. And it shows that one person can't really help everyone, right? There's so much more need out there than what coaching practice can provide. So I was able to share my book, because it was an author segment there. And my book is called Adjusting to Life in the USA, which starts with just the basics of how to use communication tools, how to learn language, to understanding American culture and comparing it to yours, and what are some things that you need to focus on, to how to integrate into school, workplace, look at careers choices there, and also even go through the citizenship process.
Wow, it's like a complete resource guide. What can people expect when they buy your book, besides everything that you already told us? Like, what else is something that you really think that is important for us to have?
That's a great question, actually. And I think the book is a resource, not just in information, but also in that emotional component. I really focused on, how do you have a productive conversations? How do you disagree in the United States, which is totally different from other places, right? And then also working on your own, not only confidence, but being able to take care of yourself, or what we call self-care here. So those are some pieces that I've also integrated, and I feel very proud of, because you can't just keep learning without what I call charging your own battery, right? You need to take time for yourself and be okay to say, okay, today was really overwhelming. I need half an hour to myself where it's just quiet in my house, if that's something that you like. Or maybe it's just listening to the music, or maybe it's calling somebody from your own country where you can just be like, okay, now I feel better because I know nothing is wrong with me. It's just this is a new country that I'm exposed to, and I'm just learning to navigate here.
You know, Selma, you talk on a very important point, because as immigrants and refugees, we concentrate on working, and we forget about self-care. And that is something that is important to have in our resource book. So I really appreciate you having that there.
Thank you.
Selma, how important is mindset when someone is trying to build a new life?
It's absolutely very important. In fact, mindset is what helps people kind of take that first initial steps into learning. And I have actually developed a framework for adjusting to United States called Adjust Framework for Cultural Integration. And the first step of that is being adaptable and having the skills to grow and see opportunities here, and also knowing that where you grow really is the stretch zone. It's not where you are currently and not somewhere that's really advanced, but like in the middle. So kind of developing the mindset that, okay, I don't know this yet, but I am learning, right? So being positive and having the mindset that you are able to grow. You're not a finished product yet. No one is. And then taking the concrete steps to get there is really important. And that's what leads to growth.
That's wonderful to hear, Selma, because when you said not yet, but you're working on it. And I think being honest to yourself and also to others, it will give you more opportunities, especially at work. Because when you said somebody and you are confident to say, I don't know this yet, but I'm working on it. So, Selma, how can our audience contact you if they want to seek your services?
So they can go to my website, aspireusacoaching.com. There they can see my book, Adjusting to Life in the USA. They can purchase it through Amazon or through other book retailers if they just look at the title or they type in my name. Also, I do help nonprofits. So if people are interested in sponsoring maybe a classroom, they can get information on the website of how to do that. I also offer coaching services and courses as well, and trainings. So my coaching services, I start with a free consultation so that people can book directly to the website.
You hear that? Free consultation.
Yes. And I also offer professional development. Currently, I'm running a 12-week seminar where I take people on this whole adjustment journey in 12 weeks, where they go through different stages and work on different domains of their lives to help them with transition. So I offer that as well, and speaking engagements. And of course, there are several classes to help people learn on their own time as well on the website.
Wonderful, Selma. It was a pleasure having you here. I really appreciate that you accepted our invitation for our audience to listen about your services. We have a small gift for you. We brought you flowers. It's spring, and so we want to make sure that you get something from us as our members. And this has been another episode of Código Mujer, Central PA First Latina Podcast. Thank you for listening to us. Don't forget you can listen to the podcast in Spotify and YouTube and Amazon Music. Thank you and have a nice day. Goodbye.